The Southern Poverty Law Center is vowing to vigorously fight an indictment leveled against the civil rights organization by the Department of Justice. FBI Director Kash Patel joined Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche earlier in the week, claiming that a DOJ investigation found that the SPLC used donor money to pay informants in extremist groups like the Ku Klux Klan and the National Socialist Movement, and then hid the payments through shell companies. The 11-count indictment was handed down by a federal grand jury in Alabama, where the Southern Poverty Law Center is located. The organization's interim CEO and president said he is, quote, outraged by the false accusations. Joining us now, the president and CEO of the National Urban League, Mark Morial, and former U.S. Attorney and MS Now legal analyst, Joyce Vance. Our thanks to you both for being with us.
Thank
Joyce,
you.
I'll start with you. Can you just walk us through this indictment? What allegations are made, and in your estimation, do they have merit?
Well, this, Jonathan, is something we've discussed before. It's a speaking indictment. So instead of just being bare bones, the Justice Department lays out its entire theory of the case. They then charge the Southern Poverty Law Center. They only charge the entity. They don't charge any individuals with wire fraud, with making false statements to banks, and to money laundering. The money laundering charge first. That depends entirely on whether there's any merit to the other two substantive charges. If they don't work out for the government, then money laundering is off the table. And so it's interesting. I think the easiest way to summarize the merits of this indictment is to say that it's hyper-focused on one aspect of how the Southern Poverty Law Center operated, that for a period of time they paid informants, they paid them a lot of money to provide information about various domestic terror, white supremacist hate groups. And this is not unused in federal law enforcement either. If you want to get information about a domestic terror group, you have to go and talk to domestic terrorists. Oftentimes, those are unscrupulous people, and your best way in is to pay them. So what this indictment does is it sort of uses the fiction that the only thing that the Southern Poverty Law Center was doing was paying informants, and it ignores the center's larger work, which involved dismantling those entities. They were the entity that was responsible for bankrupting the Ku Klux Klan and putting them out of business. As domestic terror groups reformed in that vacuum, they then began scrutinizing them, often working with law enforcement to provide information. The point here is that this might be an indictment that looks good on its face in some ways, but it doesn't hold up to scrutiny. And a jury, of course, will hear the evidence in this larger context. Tough sell for prosecutors to convict.
Mark, when you look at how this has now been used politically on the internet, on the cover of the New York Post today, the argument is that this money has funded. This is the money that was responsible for the Unite the Right rally, for Charlottesville, that the KKK actually, per the cover of the Post, funded by the SLPC. And so for you and the question of paid informants, how do you process the conversation that's happening as a result?
The indictment is nakedly political, and it's the Justice Department turning on itself. For years, federal law enforcement worked with the Southern Poverty Law Center to ferret out hate groups and domestic terrorist groups. And recently, the Justice Department canceled its relationship with the Southern Poverty Law Center. So the government has been intimately involved in what the Southern Poverty Law Center has done, which has been an important public service, and that is to ferret out these hate groups, these domestic terrorist groups, these anti-Semitic groups. And this Justice Department, once again, is furthering this pattern and practice of an assault on civil rights through frivolous, politically motivated indictments. Think of Comey. Think of the Attorney General in New York. Think of these. This is a continuation, indeed, of that pattern. And to stand up against this is really the call to action for the American people, because the Justice Department itself in recent years has identified these types of groups as the biggest threat to the public safety, to mass violence in this country, these supremacist groups, these domestic terrorist groups. So the Southern Poverty Law Center has performed an important public service, consistently and continuously working with our government to ferret out these groups. So this indictment, I think, is political. I think it's a grasping at straws. And let's see how it evolves in the courts.
And Mark, you can't help but note that the two men up front announcing this, FBI Director Kash Patel trying to ward off some negative headlines, and Interim General Todd Blanche, who's trying to make a bid for the job full time, feels like this is an audience of one move, too, no?
A distraction away from the problems that they're facing, a distraction away from the FBI director's continuing controversy over his personal conduct. And, of course, the acting attorney general wants to be confirmed. And so maybe he's playing to a certain audience. But this is what's so important. The civil rights community and the American people have to stand up to prosecutorial misconduct, to the weaponization of the power of the state and the Justice Department. And this is just another example of that pattern continuing. So we're going to stand with the Southern Poverty Law Center. I think the more people understand the magnitude and the importance of the work that they've done, I think the public is going to understand it, and they're going to support it, and they're going to see this indictment for what it is, and that is nakedly political.
And Joyce, lastly and briefly, can you walk us through what the next steps are going to be?
Right. So we'll see a flurry of pretrial motions trying to determine what goes forward. There will, of course, be discovery, but these are largely the kinds of charges that get vetted either on a guilty plea or at trial. Very unlikely that we'll see a guilty plea here. And to the point that you just made, this is a very unusual press conference. It's relatively rare for the Attorney General of the United States, or an acting one in this case, to announce a case that a United States Attorney's Office has indicted. Usually those announcements happen in district. It's very rare for Main Justice to send high-ranking officials down. Here we've got the two top leaders at DOJ making the announcement without the U.S. attorney alongside them. I think that underscores the analysis that this was nakedly political.
All right. Former U.S. Attorney, MS Now legal analyst Joyce Vance, and President and CEO of the National Urban League, Mark Morial. Our thanks to you both.